I arrived at the building just after 4:30 in the evening. Not late enough for night, but late enough for the sun to cast long shadows across the street. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood that welcomed new faces. You could feel it the moment you stepped out of the bus. A sense of quiet that didn't belong to living places. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, with my single suitcase beside me, taking in the cracked sidewalk, the peeling paint on the walls, the sagging balcony rails that looked one storm away from collapse. This wasn't the dream. This wasn't comfort. This wasn't home. But it was cheap. And right now, cheap was the only thing I could afford. I took a slow breath. Not because I needed the air, but because the building felt like it demanded one. As if it wanted me to inhale it. As if it wanted to enter with me. The entrance door hung slightly crooked on its hinge. It groaned softly when I pulled it open, like it hadn't been touched in months. Or like it didn't want to be touched at all. Inside, the hallway stretched into darkness. Long, narrow, dust floating in the air like tired ghosts. The floorboards creaked beneath my shoes, even though I walked lightly, like the building wanted to announce my arrival. Every step felt louder than it should have been, louder than necessary. The lights overhead flickered with a weak, yellow glow. They buzzed quietly, as if struggling to stay alive. One bulb sparked, then died completely, leaving a small portion of the hallway swallowed in shadow. I paused, just for a moment, because silence like this doesn't happen by accident. The kind of silence I heard wasn't peaceful. It wasn't calm. It was the kind of silence that feels like it's listening, like it's waiting for you to speak first. I took one step forward, then another. My suitcase wheels scraped lightly along the old wooden tiles. That's when I heard it. Faint, light, almost too soft to notice. A shuffling sound, coming from behind the walls. Something moving just out of sight. Not the scurry of a mouse. Not the buzz of pipes. Not the hum of old wiring. This was slower, heavier. The sound of something dragging, then pausing, then dragging again. I stopped walking, and the sound stopped with me. For a few seconds, the hallway fell perfectly still. No flickering lights. No distant noise. Not even the city outside. Just me, and a building that didn't feel empty. I cleared my throat quietly, as if sound would break whatever tension I felt. It didn't. If anything, it made the silence heavier. I reached the first door on the left. Someone had scratched a nameplate down to bare metal. The next door had peeling stickers on it. Another door had a dent, as if it had been kicked in years ago. Not one of them looked welcoming. As I walked further, the shuffling behind the walls began again, but from a different spot, as if whatever was inside the building was moving with me, tracking me, following my steps. From the other side of the plaster, I pressed my hand lightly against the wall. The surface felt cold, too cold for a building this old. Almost like something beneath it had no warmth at all. I pulled my hand back quickly. The perfume drifted gently in the air, wrapping around me like an invisible hand. It felt almost intentional, as if it was meant to greet me, or guide me, or warn me. I hesitated before walking past the half-open door. I listened carefully, but heard only that same deep silence. Still, the scent lingered. Sweet, haunting, unsettling. I whispered to myself, probably the last tenants. But even as I said it, I didn't believe my own words. At the far end of the hallway, a door was propped open just an inch. A faint breeze slipped through the crack, carrying something unfamiliar. A smell, soft, sweet, delicate, perfume, fresh perfume. Not stale, not old, not abandoned. Fresh, as if someone had sprayed it. In the last few minutes, I didn't know why, but the scent felt wrong. Not because it was unpleasant, but because it didn't belong here. Nothing in this building smelled like life. Nothing smelled cared for. Not until now. Perfume doesn't stay fresh when no one is home. Not after days. Not after weeks. Not in a place like this. This scent felt recent. Alive. Present. I forced myself to keep moving. Step by step. Deeper into the hallway. closer to the apartment I was supposed to call home. But with every step, the perfume followed behind me, soft and patient, floating through the air, like a whisper that refused to leave me alone. I unlocked the apartment door slowly, half expecting the hinges to scream, but instead, the door slid open with a smoothness that didn't match the rest of the building. The moment I stepped inside, a strange warmth brushed against my face, like someone had been there just seconds ago. The room didn't smell like dust or emptiness. It smelled lived in. I placed my suitcase near the door and took a few steps into the small living space. My shoes pressed softly into the carpet, and the floor felt warm under my feet. Too warm for a room with no sunlight, and no heater running. Then I noticed it. A glass, sitting neatly on the kitchen counter. Not dirty, not dusty, not forgotten. Clean, clear, fresh water inside, with small air bubbles still clinging to the sides, as if it had been poured moments before I arrived. I stood there staring at it, waiting for my brain to catch up with what my eyes were telling me. Nobody had keys to this place except the landlord, and she'd sworn no one had lived here for months. So how was the water still moving in the glass? A tiny ripple on its surface shifted gently back and forth, as if disturbed by a recent touch. I swallowed hard. My voice felt stuck somewhere behind my teeth. I moved from the counter toward the old couch. A thin blanket lay folded neatly across one armrest. Perfectly straight, perfectly pressed. Too perfect for an empty apartment. I picked it up. It was warm. Not the kind of warmth you'd get from sunlight. There was none. Not the kind you'd get from a heater. It wasn't on. This warmth came from a body. A human body. Someone sitting here. Recently, I let the blanket slip from my fingers and fall back into place. My heartbeat echoed in my ears, like heavy footsteps in an empty hall. I walked toward the small bathroom to check if maybe a window had been left open. But the moment I reached the doorway, a sudden sound froze me in place. Running water. A tap. Open. Pouring steadily. I leaned forward slightly and saw the bathroom sink overflowing with light, reflecting off the stream of clear water, rushing from the faucet.
For a long moment, I didn't move. I couldn't. The sound of the water felt too normal and too wrong. At the same time, I reached out and turned the handle. The water stopped instantly. The pipes groaned softly as if relieved. I stared at the sink, watching the last few drops slide down the drain, and whispered under my breath, I didn't leave this running. But the empty bathroom didn't answer.
I stepped back into the main room, trying to shake the feeling creeping up my spine. I told myself that maybe the landlord had been here earlier. Maybe she forgot the tap. Maybe the blanket was just left behind. Maybe the glass was nothing. But then, I noticed the closet, a small wooden door, in the far corner of the apartment, barely visible, barely noticeable, slightly open, just an inch, just enough to show darkness inside. Not the deep black of an empty space, but the muted shadow of something hiding, just beyond the light. I stared at the crack in the door, my breath tightening. A cold draft flowed from inside, brushing against my skin. Like fingertips, I took one slow step forward. The door didn't move. Another step, still stillness. But the cold air grew stronger, as if the closet itself was exhaling. I reached out, my hand trembling just a little, and placed my fingers on the edge of the door. Before I could pull it open, before I could even breathe, a soft sound whispered through the room. The sound of a floorboard shifting. Behind me, in the living room. Light, gentle, like someone stepping carefully, so they wouldn't be heard. But I heard it, clear as day. I turned quickly, heart pounding, eyes scanning every corner of the room. No one, nothing, but the air felt heavy, like the presence of someone who had just moved, out of sight, just 1 second too late for me to catch. I backed away from the closet, without opening it. My instincts were louder than my curiosity now. Whatever was here, whatever had been here, wasn't gone. It was here, in this room, watching, waiting, Close. I whispered to myself, barely audible, as I reached for my suitcase again. I'm not alone in here. Night settled over the apartment, faster than I expected. One moment the windows showed the fading blue of evening, and the next, everything outside was swallowed by darkness. I turned off the last light and lay on the bed. The mattress was thin, the sheets were cold, and the silence felt heavier than any silence I'd ever known. I tried to sleep. I really did. But the apartment had other plans. At first, it was just a soft creak, a single, gentle shift of wood from somewhere in the hallway. I ignored it. Old buildings make noise. That's what I told myself. Then came another, a slow tap, like a fingernail against the wall. Then another tap, a little closer. I held my breath and listened. The room felt smaller. The air felt tighter. The darkness pressed against my eyelids, even though they were already closed. Then, I heard breathing. Not mine. Not the steady in and out rhythm of someone asleep. This was different. Shallow, slow, almost curious. Came from the corner of the room. Then from the hallway. Then right behind the wall near my bed. Light, delicate breaths, as if someone was standing on the other side, listening to me. I opened my eyes. The hallway was a dark tunnel, stretching into a pitch-black void. But as I stared, as my eyes adjusted, something moved. A shadow. Quick. Silent. A shape crossing the hallway. Like a person passing by. But with no footsteps, no sound, no presence except darkness. I sat up slowly, my heart thudding in my chest, my mind insisting I saw nothing, but my instincts screaming that someone, or something, had just walked past my room. I leaned forward, trying to see deeper into the hall. That was when I heard it. A whisper. Soft. Female. Right beside my ear. Though no one was there. Just one word. My name.
Chris.
I froze. The voice was warm, gentle, almost familiar. Like someone who knew me. Someone who wanted my attention. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't even blink. The whisper drifted through the darkness again. Closer this time, almost touching my skin.
Chris.
Cold wave washed over my entire body. My throat tightened, as every instinct begged me to turn on the lights, to run, to hide, but I couldn't do anything. I just sat there, locked in stillness, listening as the apartment around me exhaled. And in that moment, with the darkness closing in, one thought pulsed through my mind. Someone else was in the room with me. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I walked to the corner of the living room, rubbing the exhaustion from my eyes, trying to shake off the echo of that whispered Chris, still clinging to my thoughts. That's when I noticed it. A small patch on the wall, where the paint looked uneven. Not cracked, not peeling, but disturbed, as if someone had scraped it. I stepped closer. The closer I got, the colder the air felt. A slow drop in temperature that made my fingertips numb. I reached out and brushed the patch of wall. With the back of my hand, the paint flaked off slightly, thin, delicate curls of white drifting down, like tiny pieces of snow, beneath the peeling paint. There were lines, carved lines, sharp, intentional, letters scratched deep into the wall, by someone's fingernails, or something just as desperate. I leaned in closer, and wiped away more paint with my thumb. A name appeared, Cassandra. The carving wasn't old. It didn't look worn or faded or eaten away by time. It looked fresh, raw, new, as if she carved it, not months ago, but days ago, hours ago, maybe even while I was sleeping. My breath hitched as I stared at the name. The coldness in the room tightened its grip, wrapping around my neck, like a chilling hand. Then, the lights above me flickered. Once, twice, a rapid stuttering flash that threw shadows across the walls, warping them into long, twisted shapes that stretched toward me. I stepped back instinctively. The temperature dropped again. Harder this time. A wave of freezing air swept across the room like a breath, straight from a winter grave. My teeth clenched as the cold sank deep into my bones. The overhead light flickered violently, buzzing, shuddering, fighting against something unseen. And just as I whispered under my breath, "Who is Cassandra?" the lights went out, completely. Darkness swallowed the room whole, and in that pitch-black silence, standing alone with the carved name behind me, I felt it. A presence, right there, right beside me, breathing. The darkness from the night before still clung to me as I stepped out of my apartment the next morning. The hall didn't feel like a hallway. It felt like a long throat. That swallowed sound. I locked my door and turned to leave, hoping some fresh air would clear my head. But the moment I stepped into the hall, I saw someone. A woman, mid-40s, carrying a grocery bag. She froze when she noticed me. Not surprised, but startled, as if she'd seen something she expected, but hoped she wouldn't. I forced a smile. "Morning," I said. She didn't reply. She didn't nod. She didn't blink. She just lowered her head and walked past me briskly, hugging the wall, as if coming too close to me might burn her. Her steps quickened. The further she got, by the time she reached her door, she practically shoved herself inside and slammed it shut behind her. I stood there in the hallway, confused, feeling the silence rush in around me again. As I reached the stairs, another neighbor appeared. A thin, older man in a wrinkled shirt, holding a cup of instant coffee. He looked exhausted, eyes red, hands trembling. He saw me, and for a moment his expression softened, like he pitied me. "First night?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "Yeah, didn't sleep much." He stared into his coffee, breathing slowly through his nose, as if choosing his words carefully. "You won't last long," he muttered. "None of us do." I frowned. What's that supposed to mean? He shook his head. "No one stays here. Not for long." His voice cracked, like he was speaking from experience. He wished he could forget. Before I could ask more, he stepped back toward his apartment. "Listen," he whispered, eyes darting toward my door. "If you hear anything at night, anything, don't answer it." He closed his door softly, leaving me alone, with that warning echoing in my head. I turned around slowly, now feeling watched by every doorway in the hallway. On my way toward the exit, the third neighbor appeared. A tall man, broad shoulders, dark hoodie. He leaned against the wall, as if he had been waiting for me, or watching me. His eyes were cold, alert, studying me, like he was measuring the time I had left. "You're the new guy," he said. "Yeah," I replied hesitantly. "Just moved in yesterday." He nodded slowly, almost sympathetically. "What did she tell you about the place?" he asked. "Just that the last tenant left in a hurry," I replied. "Didn't take much with her." He smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the kind of smile that people give right before they tell you the truth you don't want to hear. "She didn't leave," he said. My throat tightened. "What do you mean she didn't leave?" He leaned closer, his voice dropping into a low whisper that felt too heavy for the hallway. "The last tenant," he paused, eyes fixed on mine, "never left." The moment those words left his mouth, the hallway light flickered. Just once, just enough to make the shadows jump. I swallowed hard. What happened to her? He straightened his back, pushed himself off the wall, and walked away without another word. As he passed me, he murmured just loud enough for me to hear. "Ask the walls." He didn't stop, didn't look back. He just disappeared into the stairwell's darkness, leaving me standing alone with a question I didn't want the answer to. Who exactly was still in that apartment with me? By the time I got back to my apartment, my mind was still tangled with the neighbors' warnings, their expressions, their fear. There's silence. I closed the door behind me, and the moment the latch clicked, the apartment felt different. Not empty, not quiet, just aware. I dropped my keys on the counter and let out a slow breath, trying to convince myself that everything I'd heard was just superstition, just tired people telling ghost stories in a dying building. But then, I heard it, a soft scratching sound, coming from the vent, near the ceiling. Faint, subtle, quick, like fingernails dragging lightly across metal from the inside. I stepped closer, thinking maybe it was a rat, or the wind, or old pipes shifting. But the moment I got near it, the sound changed. The scratching slowed, softened, turned into something else entirely. A quiet whimper, a soft, muffled cry, bleeding through the vent, like someone was pressed up against it, whispering their grief straight into the walls. I froze. My skin prickled. My breath caught in my throat. The sound wasn't mechanical, wasn't distant. It was human, a woman's voice, faint, fragile, as if she'd been crying for a very, very long time. I whispered, "Hello," even though my voice barely escaped my lips. Crying stopped instantly. Silence poured into the room, heavy and expectant, as if something behind the vent had turned its head toward me and was listening. I stepped back slowly, every instinct screaming that whatever was in those walls was far too close. Trying to shake the feeling, I walked toward the hallway. And that's when I noticed something new. A small hole, drilled into the wall. Low, just a few inches above the floorboard. Perfectly round. Too clean to be an accident. Too intentional to be harmless. I crouched down and brought my face closer. The hole wasn't empty. It led into darkness. Pitch black, like a tunnel carved deeper than the wall should allow. A cold breath of air leaked from inside it, carrying with it a familiar scent. Perfume. The same perfume I smelled on day one. But this time it wasn't faint. It wasn't subtle. It was strong. Fresh. Sharp. Like someone had sprayed it. Right before I leaned down, I jerked back instinctively, my heart thumping hard against my chest. I looked around and found another hole. Then another. And another. All drilled with the same precision. All leading into darkness. I stood slowly, feeling the apartment tighten around me. Walls closing in, with secrets they didn't want me to understand. Perfume thickened in the air, sweet and suffocating, wrapping around me like invisible hands. I covered my nose, but the scent pushed through. Stronger, closer, almost clinging to my skin. I whispered under my breath, "Cassandra, is this you?" A soft tap answered from inside the wall. Then another. Then a faint, trembling breath. That wasn't mine. The walls weren't just hiding sounds. They were hiding someone. Someone who wanted me to hear her. Someone who had never left. That night, I tried to sleep earlier than usual, thinking maybe exhaustion would knock me out, before the apartment woke up again. But the moment I turned off the lamp, the darkness wrapped around me differently. Heavier, thicker, like it wasn't the absence of light, but the presence of something else. I lay there on my back, eyes half open, watching the faint glow from the hallway spill across the floor. The air was cold, colder than it should have been. Each breath floated back at me, sharp and icy, like I was exhaling winter. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I couldn't tell. Then, the bed dipped, just slightly, just enough to make the mattress shift beneath me, as if someone had sat down. At the foot of the bed, my eyes shot open instantly. The room was still, silent, but the pressure on the mattress didn't go away. It deepened, like weight settling, like someone adjusting their posture, like someone sitting there, quietly, watching. I forced myself to lift my head, just an inch, enough to see the foot of the bed, through the soft glow from the hallway. That was when I saw it, a shape, a silhouette, a woman-shaped shadow, sitting perfectly still, at the edge of the mattress, not leaning, not moving, just there. The outline wasn't sharp, It wavered like mist, dark like smoke, but shaped unmistakably, like a woman with long hair, falling over her shoulders. My heart thudded so loudly. I could hear it pulse in my ears. I blinked once, slow, terrified, and when my eyes opened again, she was gone. Not faded, not dissolved. Gone, as if she was never there at all. The mattress slowly rose back into place, the pressure lifting. As the coldness in the room thickened around me, I sat up, breath shaking, hands trembling against the blanket. "Cassandra?" The word slipped out, before I even realized I'd said it. The name felt heavy in my mouth, like the walls were listening, like the shadows leaned in to hear it. And then, a breath, not mine, a cold, soft exhale, brushed across the side of my neck, gentle, but unmistakably human. My whole body locked in place. The breath came again. Slow, close, too close, like someone was leaning in, mouth inches from my skin, whispering without words. I turned my head slowly, too afraid to do it quickly, and the cold followed my movement, like it was attached to me. I whispered again, barely audible. "Cassandra? Are you here?" Silence, then a faint shift behind me. The softest rustle of fabric, like someone moving their leg across the sheets. I whipped around. No one. Nothing. Just darkness. But the bed covers had changed. A slight indentation, right beside where I had been laying. Like someone had lain there, a moment before I turned. I pressed my palm against the spot, freezing cold. Not the kind of cold from air conditioning. Not the cold from an open window. The cold of absence. The cold of someone who shouldn't be there, but is. The perfume scent drifted across my nose. Faint, soft, the same scent from the walls, from the blanket, from the first day I arrived. This time, there was no mistaking it. It wasn't coming from the hall. Not from the vents. Not from the air. It was coming from the bed. From that spot. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to breathe again. "Cassandra," I whispered, voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" The light in the hallway flickered. Once, twice, casting long, trembling shadows into the room. And for a split second, in that tiny flash of light, I saw the silhouette again, standing in the doorway. Still, quiet, watching. When the light steadied, she was gone. But the cold breath brushed against my ear again, this time closer. Too close. My blood froze. She knew my name. She had been whispering it, long before I dared to say hers. The room darkened around me, the cold tightening, like a hand around my body. All at once, I understood something. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to reach me, trying to speak, trying to make contact. And worse, she wasn't the only thing in the apartment, moving through those walls. She was just the first, to let me see her. As if she was leaning in, as if she was trying to speak, but the words couldn't quite escape. The mattress shifted. The covers tightened around my foot. And then, a whisper. Not a word. Not a full sound. Just a breathy, trembling exhale that carried the shape of a single syllable.
Chris.
The morning after Cassandra whispered my name, I didn't want to move. I didn't want to breathe. Part of me hoped. Maybe I had imagined everything. But the cold spot on the bed was still there. The indentation. The lingering perfume. Reality didn't soften overnight. It hardened. And that was the day I decided I needed answers. I started searching the apartment. Not casually, but like a man trying to escape a maze he didn't know he was trapped in. Cabinets. Drawers. Under the sink. Behind the fridge. Nothing. All quiet. All empty. Except the closet. Something about it felt wrong now. Like the shadows were thicker. Like it was holding its breath with me. I opened the door. The air inside was stale, as if it hadn't been disturbed for months. Maybe years. I pushed the clothes aside. They rustled softly, the sound echoing too loudly in the narrow space. Behind them, the back wall had a strange bulge. A slight unevenness I hadn't noticed before. A seam, just barely visible. A line that didn't match the rest of the drywall. I pressed my fingers against it. The panel shifted. Not much, just enough to reveal that it wasn't fixed in place. My heartbeat quickened. I hooked my nails into the edge and pulled. Panel slid loose with a dry scraping sound. Behind it, a hollow space, a narrow pocket carved into the wall. Inside, wrapped in dust and tied with thinning string, was a small black leather notebook. Old, stiff, the cover worn smooth from being held, and opened, and gripped too tightly. A name scratched into the corner, almost invisible under the grime. Cassandra M. My stomach dropped. This was hers. I carried the journal out into the light, sat on the floor, and gently loosened the string. The first page crackled, the dried spine protesting as I opened it. Her handwriting was shaky. Thin lines, letters pressed too hard, as if she wrote quickly, or in fear. I began reading.
Something is wrong with this building.
She wrote that she'd been hearing voices. Not conversations, not words. Just murmuring. Constant, soft, and close. Like someone humming behind the walls. She thought it was pipes at first. Old plumbing. Thin walls. But she wrote.
The voices don't sound like they're traveling through the walls. They sound like they're inside them.
I swallowed hard and kept reading. Cassandra described nights where the building shifted. Not settling, not creaking, but moving. As if the walls breathed. As if the floors rose and fell with invisible weight. She said some nights the apartment leaned. Ever so slightly. To the left. Other nights to the right. Like the entire structure was adjusting itself. Around her, I felt the walls pulse faintly around me. As I read that line, a slow, rhythmic pressure.
I can't sleep anymore.
As though the building recognized that its secrets were being uncovered again. At first she thought it was a tenant, a man from the 5th floor. Quiet, thin, always wearing dark clothes. But she wrote, she called him, the caretaker. My skin crawled. I remembered the neighbor who refused to look at me. The one who warned me not to stay long. The one who said the last tenant never left.
Someone watches me.
Was he talking about Cassandra? Or was he talking about something else entirely? I turned the page with trembling fingers. The handwriting here was messier, shakier, the ink darker, as if she pressed the pen so hard. The tip was splitting. She said the caretaker didn't knock, didn't speak, didn't move. He just stood there, hours at a time. And she knew because she could see his shadow, under the door, not the shape of feet.
He's not a tenant. He's not anything. He appears wherever I go. Always still. Always silent. He stands outside my door at night.
But a tall, thin silhouette that stretched too far, as if it wasn't shaped by a human body, but by something taller, longer, wrong. My pulse thundered in my ears. As I turned to the final entry, the ink here looked rushed, uneven, as if she had been writing in darkness. Or in a hurry. Some lines were scratched out. Others doubled back over themselves. But one sentence, cut clean through the middle of the page. A sentence she hadn't crossed out. A sentence she wanted someone, anyone, to find. If I vanished, the building did it. My hands went cold. The air in the apartment shifted. Not wind, not a breeze. A movement, deep in the walls, rolling through the floor, vibrating beneath my feet. Like the building had heard its own name, spoken aloud again. I closed the journal slowly, the cover trembling in my grip. If Cassandra had disappeared, if she truly never left, then she wasn't haunting me. She was warning me. And worse, whatever took her, wasn't finished. Not with her, and not with me. When I finished reading Cassandra's journal, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. It felt like I was holding a ghost's last breath, and she had whispered it directly into my ear. I needed answers. Real ones. Not shadows. Not whispers. Not nightmares disguised as coincidences. So I went downstairs, to the only place in the building that looked older than everything else, the dusty, cramped basement. The walls were damp. The pipes sweated thick drops of water that hit the floor with slow, echoing drips. A chain pulled from the ceiling flickered on a single bulb, casting trembling circles of light across stacks of yellowed boxes. Each box had a label, faded, barely legible, but one word kept showing up. Again and again, archives. A word that didn't belong. In a residential building, I followed the labels, dust rising around me like old ghosts waking up. Then I found a metal filing cabinet, tall, rusted, its drawers swollen with age. I pulled one open. It screamed, a metallic shriek that echoed through the basement, and up into the pipes. Inside were Tenant records, dozens, maybe hundreds, and the dates stretched back over a century. The first file I picked up was brittle with age, the paper the color of old bone. The address matched mine. My building, this building, was over 100 years old. But that wasn't the part that startled me. The part that made my skin tighten was the list of names. A long list. Too long. Tenants. Occupants. People who lived in my exact apartment. Unit 3B. I expected to see the usual. Move-in dates, move-out dates, rent receipts. But half the files ended abruptly. No departure date. No forwarding address. Just blank space. And written in red pencil beside many of them. A single word, missing. Not relocated. Not evicted. Not transfer. Missing. Dozens of names. Spanning decades. Men. Women. Sometimes entire families. All vanished. My stomach twisted. I tried to breathe quietly as I examined the oldest files. The handwriting grew more elaborate, ink darker, edges burned by time. Some files had clipped newspaper articles attached. Headlines that chilled my blood. Local woman disappears, no signs of struggle. Tenant vanishes overnight, police baffled. Third resident missing from same address. I flipped through article after article, each sounding the same. Police investigations. Interviews with neighbors. Searches. No evidence. No suspects. No bodies. Every report ended the same way. Case closed due to lack of leads. Closed, but never solved. The deeper I dug, the colder the basement felt. Then I found a thicker folder, locked with a tarnished clasp. I forced it open. Inside were photographs, black and white, blurry, almost warped. Images of the building long before it was an apartment, before renovations, before modern walls and paint. And underneath the photographs, pages written in looping ink, dated nearly a century ago. My eyes froze on the first line. The Order of the Bound Veil, records of our ritual site. A cult, an actual cult. I read on, breath shaky. They called themselves the Order of the Bound Veil, a group that believed the human soul could be tethered, anchored to physical structures, buildings, rooms, walls. They believed a soul didn't have to drift, didn't have to pass on. It could be contained, preserved, locked inside a space forever. Their rituals focused on one goal, soul binding. The concept made my skin crawl. They wrote about sacrificing animals, draining energy, channeling fear, as a way to loosen a soul from a body, before death, then forcing it into a structure, into walls. My walls. I kept reading, voice trembling in my head. The journal described experiments, failed bindings, violent side effects, residual hauntings. Echoed consciousness. The cult believed consciousness could fracture, splinter, repeat like a broken record. Some souls became trapped. Some merged with the building. Some fed on the occupants. Pages and pages of detailed notes. And one passage circled in dark ink. Room 3B responds unusually well. The tether holds strongest there. My apartment. The room I slept in, where Cassandra whispered my name. I felt the air shift around me. The same subtle pulse I'd felt upstairs. I turned to the last document in the folder. A roster of the cult's members. Names, roles, years of activity. And then, at the very bottom, written in precise, neat handwriting. Caretaker, overseer of the bound souls. No photo, no first name, just a title. But next to it, in different handwriting. Shaky, rushed. Someone had scribbled, "Still here." My breath caught. My throat tightened. Someone, long after the cult dissolved, had updated that file. Someone new. Someone had seen him. I stood slowly, the folder hanging limp in my hands. The pipes above me groaned. The light bulb flickered. Dust shifted on the floor, as if something had just moved behind me. The building felt alive now. Awake, alert, watching me uncover its past. And I finally understood. Cassandra didn't just vanish. Neither did the tenants before her. They were taken, absorbed, bound, and whatever performed the binding was still walking these halls, still maintaining the ritual, still watching every new tenant who stepped inside. A cold breath brushed the back of my neck. I froze, and in the low hum of the basement, I heard something. Not a whisper, not a voice, but a slow, deliberate exhale, as if something ancient had just breathed me in. After learning the truth about the building, about the cult, about the missing tenants, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every sound the apartment made, every creak, every settling board, every hum of the vents, felt like the building was whispering to me, watching me, waiting. And as the night deepened, I realized something unsettling. The walls weren't just reacting to me. They were responding. It started with the familiar perfume. Soft at first, gentle, like Cassandra was easing her way into the room. Then the air shimmered at the corner of my vision. I turned slowly, my breath catching. And there she was. But this time, she wasn't a shadow, not a blurred shape, or a flicker in the dark. She was clearer, still ghost-like, translucent, pale, fading at the edges, but truly there. A woman young with tired eyes, and hair that drifted like it was floating underwater. She stood by the far wall, her form flickering softly, as if she was struggling to hold herself together. Her eyes met mine, dark, sad, knowing. My voice quivered. "Cassandra?" Her head tilted, not in anger, not in confusion, but in acknowledgement. She raised her hand, slowly, deliberately, and pointed at the vent above my bed. The room chilled instantly. My breath fogged. My fingertips tingled with cold. I dragged a chair under the vent and climbed up. The screws were loose, almost intentionally so. I removed the cover and felt a rush of cold air spill out. Inside the vent, almost hidden in the darkness, was a folded slip of paper. My hands shook as I pulled it out. A message, written in Cassandra's handwriting. 3 words. The air behind me shifted, as if someone, had leaned close to watch me read it. When I turned, Cassandra was gone, but the scent of her perfume lingered behind my ear, as if she had whispered the words herself. The room grew colder still. Lights flickered violently, and behind one of the walls, the one next to the closet, I heard tapping. Not random, a pattern, like she was knocking, trying to tell me where to look. I pressed my ear to the wall. Tap, pause, tap tap, pause, tap. A rhythm, a message, a direction. I felt along the wall slowly, until my hand brushed against something subtle. A faint groove, a seam, a false panel. My heart pounded. I wedged my fingers behind the edge and pulled. Dust exploded outward. The panel snapped off and fell to the floor with a sharp crack. Behind it, a narrow cavity, pitch black, cold, silent. I reached in cautiously and felt something under my fingertips. Fabric, a cloth bundle, small and tightly bound. Inside were items that didn't belong in a wall: a broken necklace, a crumpled photograph, a hair ribbon, a key. These weren't random objects. They were Cassandra's, her possessions, her life, stuffed away, as if hidden in desperation. As if she knew she wasn't going to escape the way she hoped. My throat tightened. She wasn't just haunting the building. She had lived and suffered inside its walls. The tapping began again, but this time deeper in the apartment, fainter, distant, calling me. I followed the sound into the hallway and toward the far corner, near the utility closet. Something felt wrong there. The air was thick, still, heavy. I ran my hand along the baseboard and felt a draft coming from behind the wall. Another hidden space. Cassandra flickered into view beside me, more solid than before, her face filled with desperation, her lips parting in silent urgency. She reached toward a spot on the wall, her hand phasing through the plaster, as if slipping into water. I pressed the same area. Something clicked. A thin, vertical seam revealed itself. I pushed harder. The panel swung inward, and behind it, a secret room. Small, windowless, silent. The air was frozen stiff, sharp enough to sting my lungs. Inside were sheets of torn wallpaper, scratch marks on the wooden beams, a moldy mattress, old food containers, a broken phone, more clothes. A thin, vertical seam revealed itself. I pushed harder. The panel swung inward, and behind it, a secret room. Small, windowless, silent. The air was frozen stiff, sharp enough to sting my lungs. Inside were sheets of torn wallpaper, scratch marks on the wooden beams, a moldy mattress, old food containers, a broken phone, more clothes. All belonging to Cassandra. This wasn't a hiding place. It was a prison, a room she had been trapped in. Not for hours, not for days, for weeks, maybe longer. I stepped inside, my heart hammering painfully. The walls were scratched with words, some clear, others smeared with panic. One phrase repeated. Another, and then at the far corner of the room, written over and over. In wild, frantic strokes, my breath stopped. My blood went cold. And behind me, a soft whisper rose, not from the room, not from the vents, not from Cassandra, but from inside the wall I had just opened. A man's voice, deep, rasping, hungry. The walls shuddered, the air twisted. Cassandra appeared beside me, eyes wide, face contorted with fear, and shook her head violently, warning me, telling me to run. But before I could move, the whisper came again. Closer this time. The hidden door slammed shut behind me. The light died, and all I could hear was Cassandra's trembling breath, beside mine in the dark, and something else, something moving, inside the walls, toward us. After what happened in the hidden room, I couldn't bring myself to sleep. Every corner of the apartment felt wrong. Too dark, too cold, too aware. Cassandra stayed close that night. I couldn't see her clearly, but I could feel her. A presence beside the bed. A soft pull in the air. The scent of her perfume rising and fading. In slow, trembling waves. Not threatening, not haunting, protecting. But even with her near, another presence lurked in the building. Something older, heavier, hanging in the walls like a heartbeat made of stone. I sensed him long before I saw him. It started with silence. Not peaceful silence, but the kind that replaces sound. The way a shadow replaces light. The hum of the vents faded. The refrigerator stopped buzzing. Even the floorboards stopped settling. The entire building held its breath. I sat upright in bed, my pulse ringing in my ears. Then I heard it. A distant metallic sound. Soft, slow, rhythmic. Clink, clink, clink. Keys. Lots of keys. Dragging across the floor somewhere in the hallway. I got up and stepped to my apartment door. Not opening it, just listening. The lights in the hall flickered, casting long, trembling shadows beneath the crack under my door. Then came the footsteps. Long strides. Uneven. Deliberate. Slow. And impossibly heavy, for a body that seemed to barely exist. Temperature dropped sharply, so cold my fingertips went numb, just touching the doorknob. I whispered, "Cassandra?" Her figure flickered into being beside me. Just a moment, just long enough for her outline to glow faintly in the darkness. She raised her hand and pressed her palm against the door, shaking her head, warning me, telling me not to look. But the footsteps grew closer, closer, right outside my door. And then the building groaned, a deep, ancient vibration that traveled through the wood, through the floor, through my bones. Against Cassandra's warning, I leaned forward and looked through the peephole and saw him, the caretaker, a tall figure, too tall, his head nearly brushing the ceiling. Thin, emaciated, his limbs impossibly long, like ropes stretched past the limit of human shape. His face wasn't a face, just pale, smooth skin, where features should have been. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just emptiness, shaped into a human outline. His head tilted slowly, as if sniffing the air without nostrils. In one hand, he held a ring of old metal keys, hundreds of them, swinging with impossible weight. In the other hand, he dragged something down the hall. A chain? A piece of metal? A fallen door hinge? I couldn't tell, but whatever it was, it scraped the floor, with a sound like bones on tile. My breath caught. My body refused to move. The caretaker stopped, right in front of my door. He didn't knock. He didn't try to open it. He simply stood there, listening, waiting, choosing, because now I understood what Cassandra meant in her journal when she wrote about being watched. The caretaker wasn't a protector. He wasn't maintaining the building. He was selecting victims, choosing which tenant the building would consume next. The door suddenly pulsed inward, as if something heavy pressed its weight against it. The metal locks rattled. The hinges moaned. Then, a breath, long, slow, cold, seeping through the cracks and washing over my skin, like winter's first exhale. My teeth chattered. The caretaker leaned closer to the door. The wood bowed inward, as if he were pressing his faceless head. Against it, a muffled whisper seeped through.
Almost ready.
My knees buckled. I staggered backward. The building lights flickered violently. Once, twice, and then held steady in a sickly yellow glow. Cassandra appeared again, more sharply this time, her form cutting through the shadows, her eyes wide, urgent, fearful. She grabbed my arm, or rather, the cold impression of her hand closed around it, and pulled me away from the door. Hard, harder than a ghost should be able to pull. Caretaker's keys jingled again, but now with impatience, with purpose. One key after another scraped against my door, testing the lock. Click, 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 trying them, one at a time. He was trying to choose the right one, trying to get in. Cassandra yanked at me again, her voice a faint, broken whisper, echoing inside my head more than in my ears. Move. She dragged me across the room. The lights flickered. The air screeched with static. As she pulled me away, the caretaker's hand suddenly slammed against the door from the other side. The wood bent inward, cracking under the pressure, like something heavy was pressing through it. I heard him whisper again, not through the door, but from the walls. "You should not be here, Unit 3. B." My entire body shook. Cassandra pulled harder. The moment we reached the bedroom doorway, the caretaker's shadow slid, under the front door, like smoke. A long, dark shape, stretching across the living room floor, searching, reaching, trying to find me. I froze, but Cassandra stepped in front of me. Her ghostly form shimmered, glowing faintly with a white-blue light. And for the first time, I saw fear replaced by something else, defiance. She pressed her hand to the floor, where the shadow crept in. There was a sound, a crackle like ice breaking. The shadow recoiled, hissing. The caretaker whispered again, this time angry.
"You protect him, just like the others."
Others? My heart pounded. My breath faltered. Had other souls tried to intervene? Had other victims become trapped ghosts? Inside these walls, Cassandra didn't respond to him. She grabbed my arm once more, her touch icy and desperate, and pulled me to the far side of the bedroom, just as the front door began to bend inward again. The caretaker had chosen his key, and he was coming in. The instant he started to unlock the door, Cassandra pushed me toward the closet. Not inside. Behind it, a small corner gap I hadn't noticed before. She pointed urgently. A hiding place. A buffer from him. From his reach. From his selection. I slipped behind the closet, heart pounding so loud. I swore he could hear it. Cassandra hovered in front of me, arms out, body trembling from the strain of keeping her shape. The door to the apartment opened. Slowly, silently, and the caretaker stepped inside. His keys dragged along the floor. His faceless head turned toward the bedroom. The walls creaked with every step he took. Dust fell from the ceiling. Air twisted into a freezing vortex around him. He was hunting, selecting, claiming, but Cassandra held her ground, creating a barrier between me and him. Her voice drifted into my mind, gentle but urgent.
Stay hidden. Stay quiet. He chooses the ones he sees.
I clamped my hand over my mouth, barely breathing. The caretaker stopped in the center of the bedroom, turning slowly, listening. His shadow stretched across the floor, searching for mine, reaching, feeling. Then, a long silence, a deeper breath, and finally,
"Not tonight."
he turned, walked back into the hallway, closed the door gently behind him. The building exhaled, and Cassandra collapsed to her knees, her form flickering weakly, as if the effort had drained her. I crawled out, voice trembling. "Cassandra, you saved me." Her form flickered once more. A whisper escaped her lips.
Not saved. Just delayed.
Then she vanished. I didn't sleep that night. Not after what I had seen. Not after the caretaker walked those halls like a shadow that forgot how to be human. And not after Cassandra appeared again, closer than ever before. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual creaking inside the walls had stopped, like the building itself was holding its breath. I sat on the edge of the bed waiting, pretending I wasn't afraid, pretending the dark wasn't pressing against me. Then it happened. Cold waves seeped through the room. Not a breeze, not air conditioning. Something else, something alive. And before I could react, I heard her voice. Not a whisper, not an echo, a memory. Chris. My name, but said with fear and exhaustion, and something even worse, acceptance. The room dissolved around me. The ceiling, the walls, the floor, everything pulled away, like someone had ripped reality open. And suddenly, I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was inside hers. Her last night. I saw Cassandra standing in the hallway, barefoot, trembling, holding a notebook tight to her chest. Her eyes were red from sleepless nights, and her lips kept moving, forming words I couldn't hear. But I felt them. She wasn't praying. She was begging. The lights around her flickered. The same flicker I've seen since moving in. That sharp stutter of electricity that feels almost intentional. Cassandra looked toward the closet, not with curiosity, but terror. She backed away slowly, but the closet door creaked open on its own. The darkness inside seemed to breathe, expanding, stretching, hungry. She whispered, "Not again, please, not again." And then the hallway began to move. Not shake, not tilt. The floor shifted under her feet. The walls closed in like a throat swallowing. And Cassandra stumbled backward, dropping her journal. I wanted to run to her, to grab her, to pull her out, but I couldn't move. I wasn't meant to change anything, only witness. The walls curved toward her, soft at first, then bending inward like melted wax. They wrapped around her ankles. She screamed, one short, sharp sound, cut off when the floor swallowed her feet. She fought hard. She reached for the door. She tried to pull herself free, but the building held her. The building wanted her. The walls weren't solid anymore. They pulsed like muscle, like flesh. Like flesh. The building wasn't just old. It was alive. Cassandra gasped, clawing at the floor as it pulled her deeper, up to her knees, then her waist. Her fingers left bloody streaks across the wood. She wasn't dying. She was being taken. Her final words tore out of her throat. "Please, don't let it take anyone else." Then she disappeared, swallowed whole. Silenced. The hallway snapped back to normal. Still. Empty. Dead. And I was thrown back into my own room, on the floor, gasping, shivering, covered in cold sweat. Cassandra was in front of me. Not the violent version I had seen, but the shadowed, quiet one. She looked at me with hollow eyes, eyes full of pain that didn't belong to the living. For a moment, we just stared at each other. And then she spoke, not with her mouth, but straight into my mind. "It wasn't my death you saw. It was my imprisonment." The room darkened. The temperature dropped again. The walls creaked. Not randomly, but in a slow, rhythmic pattern, like something inside the building was shifting. And I realized something terrifying. Cassandra never died. She was still here, still trapped, still suffering. And the building, the same one that took her, was now watching me. The room felt colder than ever. Not the kind of cold that comes from a draft, but the kind that feels deliberate, targeted, focused on me. Cassandra hovered near the corner of the room, half shadow, half memory, half something else entirely. Not alive, not dead. Something trapped in between. She didn't speak at first. She didn't need to. Her silence pressed against my chest harder than any words could. Finally, she stepped closer. The shadows around her stretched like long fingers.
Chris, there's something you need to understand before it's too late.
I felt my heartbeat slow, not because I was calm, but because the air itself felt thick, heavy, suffocating. She continued.
This building, it isn't haunted. It's hungry.
I swallowed hard, trying to make sense of her words. Hungry? Buildings don't eat. They crumble, they rot, they fall apart. But this one devoured. Cassandra reached for the wall beside her. Her fingers sank into the surface like it was soft clay. The wall pulsed under her hand, slow and steady like a heartbeat.
It feeds on us, on our fear, our exhaustion, our desperation.
A shiver crawled down my spine. She looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes weren't empty anymore. They were filled with a truth she'd been forced to learn the hardest way possible.
The building needs suffering to stay alive. It needs someone, always someone, to keep it going. Every decade, it chooses one tenant, someone vulnerable, someone it can drain slowly. Emotion by emotion, night by night. I was the last one, Chris.
My throat tightened. The realization slammed into me. She wasn't just trapped here. She wasn't lingering because of unfinished business. She wasn't haunting the apartment. She was being kept, held, stored, preserved like a living sacrifice. Cassandra stepped even closer, her form flickering with every breath I took.
The building waits, it watches. It listens through the vents, the floors, the pipes. It knows when you're tired. It knows when you're scared. It knows when you're breaking.
I felt my knees weaken. How long have I been here? I asked quietly. Long enough for it to choose you, she replied. My stomach dropped. She shook her head, almost apologetic, almost mourning me before anything even happened. It needs a replacement. It needs someone new to bind. Someone to trap between the walls, just like it trapped me. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. And now, it wants you. The lights flickered. A low rumble echoed through the apartment, deep, distant, almost like breathing. Cassandra flinched. It's listening. It knows we're talking. It can sense when you learn too much, she warned. The rumble grew louder. The walls creaked. The floor vibrated beneath my feet. Cassandra reached out, grabbing my arm. Her touch was ice cold, but desperate. Human in its fear. Chris, you have to fight it. You have to stay awake. Stay aware. Don't give it what it wants, she pleaded. What does it want? I asked. She hesitated, and for the first time, I saw terror in her eyes. Your mind. Your fear. Your sanity. The lights burst in a flash. The room plunged into darkness. And in that darkness, I heard it, a slow, deep exhale, as if the building itself was breathing right beside me. Cassandra's voice trembled. It won't stop, Chris. Not until you break. Not until you're weak enough for it to take. The darkness pressed in tighter, closer, heavier. Then Cassandra spoke one final time, her voice thin, strained, breaking apart like static. Run while you still can. And just like that, she vanished, leaving me alone in a building that finally revealed what it truly was. Alive, starving, and waiting for me to fall asleep. For hours, I sat in the darkness, heart pounding, mind racing after Cassandra's warning. The building had chosen me, and if I stayed, it would take me piece by piece, until I wasn't human anymore, just another whisper in its walls. No, not tonight. I stood up, grabbed my bag, and headed straight for the front door. My fingers wrapped around the doorknob, cold, stiff, refusing to budge. I twisted harder. Nothing. I pulled. I slammed my shoulder into it. Still nothing. The door didn't feel locked. It felt braced, as if something enormous pressed against it. From the other side, I stepped back, breathing hard. Let me out, I growled under my breath. Silence. Then, the lights snapped on. Harsh, white, blinding. The hallway outside my apartment, stretched long and empty. The flickering bulbs hissed overhead, like insects buzzing in the wires. I tried again, and this time the door flew open so violently. I stumbled into the hall. For a single moment, I thought I had a chance. Then the door slammed behind me, hard enough to shake the walls. I spun around, but the door to my apartment was gone. Nothing but a perfectly smooth wall, standing where it once had been. The building was rearranging itself, actively, and it wasn't hiding it anymore. A long breath escaped somewhere above me, deep, rattling, predatory. I took a step back. The hallway suddenly stretched, longer than it should be, much longer, like the building was pulling itself apart, to keep me inside. Cassandra, I whispered. A soft breeze brushed my ear. Her voice followed. Run! The floor vibrated beneath my feet, and the lights overhead began exploding, one by one, starting from the far end of the hall, and racing toward me. Pop, 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 piopi darkness chased me as I sprinted forward. The walls warped around me, bending inward, tilting like the hallway was melting. Doors shifted places, stretching into impossible angles, growing taller, narrower, crooked. The building wasn't just alive. It was waking up. I ran. Every step echoed like a gunshot. My breath hammered in my chest. Then, I heard it. Keys. Dozens of them. Clinking. Rattling. Swinging with slow, deliberate movement. The caretaker was near. From the shadows ahead, a tall, thin silhouette emerged. Looming. Unmoving. No face. No eyes. Just the long outline of a man-shaped figure, holding a heavy ring of keys that scraped the floor as he walked. My throat went dry. The caretaker lifted its head toward me. Though it had no eyes, I felt it looking straight into me. My foot froze mid-step. My body locked in place. It raised one long finger and pointed directly at me. The building moaned, a low groaning sound, as if the beams beneath the floor were straining to hold back a scream. I forced myself to move, to breathe, to run. The caretaker shifted instantly, not walking, not stepping, but blinking across the hall in sharp, jerking motions, like frames missing from a film. Every time I blinked, it was closer. I crashed into a side hallway, shoulder scraping the wall. The corridor twisted ahead of me, spiraling downward like a staircase, without steps. The floor dipped, the ceiling swayed. Everything felt wrong, like gravity had turned sideways. Chris, this way. Cassandra's voice. Urgent. Fraying at the edges. A door on my right jutted open on its own. Bright white light burst through the crack. I didn't question it. I dove inside. The door slammed shut behind me. The sound of the caretaker's keys jangled violently just outside. I pressed my back to the wall, panting. The room was tiny, barely big enough to stand in, a hidden space behind a false panel. Cassandra's form flickered into view, her outline faint, trembling. "I'm holding it back," she whispered. But not for long. The walls around us throbbed, a slow, pulsing heartbeat that didn't belong to any human being. I swallowed. "What do I do?" I asked. "What does it want from me?" Her expression tightened. "It wants what it always wants. Your fear, your strength, your will." The walls groaned louder. Dust rained from the ceiling. Cassandra moved closer, her presence shielding me like a fragile curtain of cold air. "You have to resist it," she whispered. "You have to fight the building. And fight him. The caretaker is its right hand. He brings the chosen ones to the walls." My voice cracked. "Cassandra, why help me?" Her form flickered, darkening at the edges. "Because if it takes you," she said, "then I stay trapped forever." The building screeched, a long metallic howl, like twisting steel. The door rattled, as something began pounding on it. Keys scraped, dragged, twisted in the lock. Cassandra turned to me, voice sharp. "Chris, get ready." The pounding grew louder, faster, harder. The lock turned. Cassandra braced herself. The door blasted open, and for the first time, I saw the caretaker fully. Towering, faceless figure, leaning into the room, reaching for me, with long, bone-thin fingers. Cassandra screamed, "Run!" and the room exploded into darkness. I didn't know how long I had been running. Minutes, hours. The hallways bent time the same way they bent everything else. But eventually, the building stopped chasing. It guided me instead. A soft, rhythmic creaking came from below. Steady, deliberate, like breath rising from the earth itself. Somewhere deep beneath the floors, something was waiting. A narrow staircase revealed itself, one I had never seen before. Old, mold-coated. Each step groaning under my weight, like it hadn't been touched in decades. And yet, it felt like it had been expecting me. I held my breath and descended. The air thickened, smelled wet, rotten, like the scent of shut-in years, and trapped souls. At the bottom of the stairs stood a rusted metal door. Heat radiated from behind it, like a furnace, burning far too hot. I pushed the door open. That's when I reached it, the heart of the building, a forgotten boiler room buried deep inside its guts. Pipes throbbed along the walls, pulsing like veins. Steam hissed from cracks, letting out small, pain-filled whimpers that didn't sound mechanical at all, and covering every surface. The walls, the floor, the boiler itself were names. Hundreds, maybe thousands, carved with fingernails, scratched with desperation, written thick with layers of mold, growing over them like fungus feeding on the dead. My eyes scanned the room. Michael, Teresa, David, Tawny, Liam, and then Cassandra. Once, twice, dozens of times, all over the boiler, the walls, even the floor beneath my feet, each carving deeper than the one before, like she had tried, again and again, to claim her existence, before the walls erased her. A chill crawled up my spine. "You made it." Her voice drifted behind me. I turned. Cassandra stood there, clearer than before, almost solid, her outline no longer flickering, but glowing faintly, with a cold, pale light. This was the closest to alive I had ever seen her. "This is where it happened," she whispered. "This is where I was taken, where I became part of the building, where everyone becomes part of it." I stepped closer. The boiler hissed. A long, angry exhale. Cassandra moved to the center of the room. The shadows bent away from her, as if even the darkness respected her suffering. I swallowed hard. "Tell me how to free you." She hesitated. Her eyes lowered. Her hands trembled. And that was when I knew. I wasn't going to like the answer. "The building binds one soul," she said quietly. "One anchor. One life force it drains to stay alive. As long as I am trapped, everyone else it consumed remains bound with me." My heart pounded. "Then break the bind," I whispered. "Tell me how." She looked up. Her expression shattered me. "Chris, the only way to free me," her voice cracked, trembling like it didn't want to form the words, "is for you to take my place." The room fell silent, as if even the boiler held its breath. "What?" I choked out. She stepped closer, gently, almost tenderly. "If you give yourself to the building, I go free. My soul escapes. My life ends the way it should have. I finally rest." I stumbled backward. My mind spun. My breath faltered. "No. No, Cassandra, there has to be another way." Tears gathered in her ghostly eyes. She shook her head slowly. "This is the curse, Chris. This is how it survives. It always replaces one with another." The walls tightened. Pipes strained. The whole building groaned, like a beast salivating over a meal. Cassandra reached toward me, her hand passing halfway through my chest. Cold electricity, pouring into my lungs. "You have a choice," she whispered. "You can save me, and doom yourself." The floor trembled violently. "Or you can run." Dust rained from above. Names etched into the walls shivered, as if the souls inside them were waking up. "And I remain here forever." The boiler thumped. Once, twice, a heartbeat, unlike any human's. Then, The shadows shifted behind Cassandra. A tall, thin shape stepped into the light. The caretaker, its faceless head tilted. In that unnatural, jerking motion, keys dangled from its hand, dripping with thick black residue. That wasn't oil. It raised one key toward me, the largest on the ring. Bent, rusty, wet. The walls moaned as the building tightened around us, breathing harder. And harder. And harder. Cassandra whispered urgently. Chris, please. You have to choose. The caretaker stepped forward. The lights flickered violently. The air drained from the room. The building whispered, in 1,000 overlapping voices. Choose. And in that moment, with the building closing in around me, the caretaker reaching out, and Cassandra's fate in my hands, I realized there were only two endings. Her freedom, or my life, and the building hungered for my decision. The building waited. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It simply waited, as if savoring the final moment, before claiming its next soul. Cassandra stood inches from me, her shadow trembling, her glow flickering like a candle in a storm. I could see the panic in her fading eyes. Her form was unraveling, edges dissolving, as if the building could no longer afford to let her stay solid. Time was running out. Behind her, the caretaker stepped closer, keys dragging across the floor, scraping metal against concrete. Like a slow, measured execution, he raised a long finger and pointed directly at me. The building whispered again in low-layered voices that crawled through my ears. Choose. Cassandra shook her head desperately. This is wrong, Chris. You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't even know me. She took a shaky breath. Go, please, before it seals you inside. I swallowed, hard. My pulse hammered like it was trying to burst out of my chest. I thought about everything. The first night I arrived, the whisper calling my name, the shadow at my bed, the journal, the neighbors who were already mourning me, before anything even happened. And Cassandra, the woman trapped between life and death, begging for freedom. She could never reach. My voice shook. There are two paths, I whispered. Cassandra froze. The one where I run, and you stay trapped here forever. Her eyes filled with a grief beyond death. And the one where I don't. She shook her head violently. No, Chris, stop. Listen to me. You still have a life. You still have a world outside these walls. Don't do this. The building moaned, its pipes tightening, its walls pulsing like a throat preparing to swallow. The caretaker leaned forward, stretching impossibly tall, casting a shadow that swallowed the room. Its voiceless whisper filled my skull. Choose. I stepped toward Cassandra. She backed away, tears streaming though her face wasn't made of anything solid. No, she begged. Please don't do this for me. I'm already gone. But I shook my head. No, Cassandra. You never left. You were forced to stay. Her voice cracked. You don't understand what it does to you. You don't come back. You don't dream. You don't breathe. You fade. I took one more step. Then let me give you what the building stole from you. She stared at me, in pure disbelief, in pain, in gratitude, so deep it radiated through the room. I lifted my hand, reaching toward her dissolving form. Cassandra, my voice trembled. Be free. Her breath hitched. Her glow brightened, for the first time, since the day she vanished. No, she whispered softly. Chris. But it was already happening. The building reacted instantly. The floor beneath me split open. Black tendrils, wet tar-like moving with hunger, coiled around my ankles. The temperature plummeted. The walls contracted violently, closing in like a massive lung exhaling. Cassandra screamed, a sound of pure anguish. The caretaker stepped back. As the building claimed me, my body was dragged downward. Slowly, painfully, like sinking into thick, living mud. The pressure built in my chest. My lungs burned. My vision blurred. Cassandra reached for me, her hands passing through mine like cold mist. Her voice was a broken whisper. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so sorry. My last breath left my body, as the darkness pulled me completely in. And then, light, soft, warm, golden light, exploded from Cassandra's chest. Her ghost began dissolving, not in pain but in peace. Her eyes widened in wonder, as her form lifted upward, weightless, glowing brighter and brighter, until she became a streak of warm radiance. She looked at me one last time, or what was left of me, and whispered, "I'll remember you." The light burst into the ceiling, burning through the rot and mold, shooting upward like a final sunrise. And then, she was gone, freed. For the first time in decades, Cassandra was finally free. The building groaned in anger, losing its grip on its oldest prisoner. And me? The darkness closed around what remained. My heartbeat slowed, faded, until it wasn't mine anymore. And the building whispered, a quiet, satisfied whisper, from every wall at once. Welcome, Chris. A new listing appears online. An apartment. Small, old, unremarkable, but cheap. Too cheap. The kind of price that makes people say, there must be something wrong with it. The page refreshes once, twice, as if the building itself is making sure someone will see it. The listing stays at the top, pinned, waiting. Hours later, on a gray, overcast morning, a new tenant arrives. Their footsteps echo through the empty hallway. They pause at the peeling door, the brass number hanging crooked, the air colder here than anywhere else in the building. They turn the key. The lock clicks open. Dust dances in the light. As the door slowly drifts inward, they hesitate, carry their luggage inside. And then, as the door swings shut behind them, the hallway falls silent, completely silent. Inside the apartment, something stirs. Pipes shift. The walls settle, as if stretching after a long sleep. A faint shadow moves, where no shadow should be, and from deep within the dark, from somewhere beneath the floorboards, inside the vents behind the walls, a whisper, soft as breath, and colder than winter, drifts through the room. Welcome. The new tenant freezes, looks around, confused, unnerved, but the sound is already gone. They shake it off. They don't know the history. They don't know the truth. They don't know what the building takes or what it keeps. They unpack. They settle in. They turn off the lights, and the darkness answers with a low, patient murmur, a whisper that once belonged to someone else, someone who tried to help, someone who didn't escape. The curse didn't end. It never ends. It simply waits for the next tenant. The curse continues,